Do you find that you're being continually pulled back for more porn and more masturbation, even if you don't feel like it sometimes? I'm Dr. Trish Leigh, brain health and sex addiction recovery coach. Today, we're talking about the controversial subject of porn and masturbation addiction. Let's dive in. Let's start with the neuroscience basics. The dopamine hit that your brain gets from porn and masturbation. This isn't about sex, nor is it really about you. It's about your brain being wired from a very young age to seek out that high amount of dopamine called a supernormal stimulus that floods your brain when you consume pornography, and especially when you couple it with masturbation. The very high level mental stimulation that you get from the fantasy of porn, coupled with the high level physical stimulation of masturbation, really can't compete to much else in the real world. When your brain initially found porn and masturbation, it was literally hijacked by those high levels of dopamine. And every time you go back, your brain continues to wire itself to need more and more. We call dopamine the neurotransmitter. We call it the chemical of more, motivation, and pleasure. And you know it. It links your brain to porn and masturbation, so you find yourself going back for more and more frequently, more consistently, and then, of course, with higher levels of intensity. You might even find yourself clicking on something that later you regret. This dopamine dependency becomes a vicious cycle. It's called a feedback loop. And of course, there's no horizontal feedback loop because what we're talking about here is a downward spiral. A downward spiral is a negative feedback loop. What it means is that when you found porn and masturbation, it caused neurological dysregulation. Studies show that porn consumption can affect the physical gray matter in your brain, making it so that your brain doesn't work as well or function as well as it would have if you never found porn. So in essence, porn changes the structure and function of your brain. What that does is it creates the negative feedback loop of a dopamine dependency. At the same time, it impacts your physical and mental health. Your physical health, you will suffer from sexual arousal dysfunctions, what I call SAD, which include erectile dysfunction, ED, and it can even cause delayed ejaculation and premature ejaculation. It actually can cause more sexual arousal dysfunctions. At the same time, it creates a lot of mental and cognitive issues. So what that means is there's an increase in anxiety, depression, and a decrease in focus, an increase in brain fog. You no longer can think or perform as well as you could if your brain never found porn. Now, let's not forget about the social implications of porn use. What happens is porn use causes that dopamine high from being in isolation, viewing sexual content linked to yourself. It is a self-sexual behavior. So then when it comes time to go out and to interact and socialize with other people, that becomes a dopamine deficit state, making it more difficult for you to be able to do that and feel good. So we know from studies that social anxiety increases, and this can even impact your ability to attract a partner and to keep a partner. So romantic relationships suffer because of porn use also. Many people who are stuck in the porn loop complain about not being able to find a partner or having relationship difficulties with the partner that they have. That's because porn use disrupts that natural link to intimacy, vulnerability, and healthy sexuality that would have occurred if porn wasn't in the mix. We know from science that it becomes more difficult to be in a relationship and find sexual satisfaction with your partner. And of course, if you're struggling from sexual arousal dysfunction, that doesn't help either. So what to do about it is the real question. Well, the answer is to resolve and remove and remediate that brain dysregulation at the core of porn compulsion and masturbation addiction. It is that change in brain function to greater levels of brain dysfunction that make you keep going back for more. When you go back for more and more porn, it's not about sex. It's about the dopamine dependency. That dependency happens because of the changes and the dysfunction in the brain performance pattern. Now, with advances in technology and neuroscience, there is a way for you to visualize that brain dysfunction that is occurring for you. It is called a qEEG brain map. When you have a brain map performed, you're able to see all the areas of brain dysregulation and the levels. The areas and the levels will affect the symptoms that you are experiencing on a mental and physical level. So I've seen thousands of these brain maps, and what I know is that the reward center in the midbrain is disrupted and desensitized by the flood of dopamine that occurs. It also disrupts the reward pleasure pathways that feed forward to the frontal cortex, the frontal lobe. What happens up there when a brain is operating in a healthy mode is judgment, impulse control, a solid ability to be able to avoid compulsions and to be on purpose, thinking and moving through the world in a way that you can create a life that you love and that you deserve. But this is disrupted, and we can visualize it in the qEEG brain map. Once you see it visualized, then it's imperative to regulate the brain back to a healthy state. And I want to remind you, if you found porn and masturbation when you were young, let's just say 12, which is the average, you started to disrupt the development of your brain before it ever developed into the healthy mode. So when you regulate your brain, you actually may be able to regulate it to the optimal levels that you've never experienced. This regulation can happen through something that's called neurofeedback. Neurofeedback is a neuromodulation technique, and it is the way of the present and the future to be able to change your brain's performance pattern. Brains inherently have something wonderful called neuroplasticity, which means the negative feedback loop that you're stuck in right now, it's semi-permanent. It can be unwired and rewired, but it needs something to push it in the proper direction. So namely, number one, it's imperative that you stop consuming explicit matter and masturbating to it. Secondarily, when you use neurofeedback, essentially what we're doing is creating an upward spiral of a positive feedback loop. Better brain performance leads to better emotional regulation, leads to self-regulation, leads to you thinking, feeling, and performing better. In this way, you can remediate and alleviate all the symptoms associated with porn addiction and erectile dysfunction that comes from it. I have seen this with my own eyes in the trend screens, data, graphs, and charts that come along with neurofeedback in the clients that I work with. This doesn't have to be something that you struggle with for the rest of your life. There is a way using advanced technology and neuroscience, and actually, it can be pretty quick in terms of this regulation can happen within just a few months. But it really depends on how much dysfunction is in your brain. That's why we visualize it first on a qEEG brain map, and then I set very specific protocols for exactly what your brain needs to move it back into the optimal mode. So if you want more information, please visit drtrishleigh.com and check it out. Now, what are some other things that you can do while you're on your journey of healing your own brain from porn addiction and erectile dysfunction due to porn? Well, this is what you can do. Is meditation is a lower level neuromodulation technique. Start there. Start meditating 3 minutes a day, up to 13 minutes a day, up to 23 minutes a day. Science shows that you can get deeper levels of regulation at each one of these increments. We also know that changing the habits in your lifestyle are imperative. So where porn used to be, or where masturbation used to be, now there needs to be real world, real life dopamine producing activities like your favorite hobbies, like laughing and hanging with your favorite people, like doing the activities that you enjoy, especially the exciting ones that give you a little bit of a thrill. Healthy activities, healthy levels of dopamine from your real life. Let's reset the pleasure pathways in your brain back to healthy levels of dopamine from real world sources. That's what this is about. So you also may benefit from coaching or from a support group. Many people try to quit porn and it can be really difficult. For some people, it's impossible without professional help. That's why me and my team are here. I don't want you to struggle and suffer alone and think that it can't be done, because sometimes it just can't be done without the proper resources, techniques, tools, strategies, and support. So if you find yourself in that position, reach out. We're here for you. Okay, you can do this. And I want you to know porn has secretly hijacked the reward pathways and the reward center in your brain. If you're suffering in silence with porn addiction and especially erectile dysfunction, you very much can get the help that you need to recover from both of them quickly. So I'll see you over at drtrishleigh.com. And as always, control your brain or it will control you. See you next time.